Welcome to the Poisoner's Cabinet. I'm Sinead.
And I'm Nick.
And this is your weekly podcast exploring the lives of the great poisoners and poisoning cases from across the centuries and creating curious cocktails inspired by the tales that we tell. And it's episode 17.
It's a very high number.
Is it?
I think it's a very high number. Can't quite believe we've done 17.
I know, it's quite nice, isn't it? 17 sort of feels edging on maturity.
Feels like, yes, we've done a grown-up thing.
It is. We're like on the cusp of adulthood. We're still wild and crazy, but, you know, we've learned.
Because normally it's like, oh, we've done 3. Ah, bugger that. Bored now.
Yes. Well, maybe all the listeners were thinking that, going, they won't stop.
Oh, God, they keep on going.
We're just tuning every week to see if they're dead yet. How are you, Nick?
I'm very well.
Lovely.
Yes.
Good. Don't want to hear any more.
Good. Enough of that nonsense. Get on with the show.
Well, moving on. Yes, the small talk's done.
No, I want a story.
Any poisonings this week? Don't try and cover up your mass murder with you galloping towards the story.
Come on, story. Move along. Nothing to see here.
Okay, never mind. Let's just gloss over all of that, shall we? You never ask if I've ever committed any poisonings, but you know what? It's best not to tug at that thread. Well, Nick, dare I ask, are you ready to drink cocktails and talk about poison?
Oh, I'm ready.
Or
Ooh.
drink poison and talk about cocktails?
No, I'm up for a cocktail.
It's cocktails all the way. See, we have to do a cocktail before we do the story, because how could we do our story without a delicious beverage?
Well, I have this gin and tonic here, so that's helping, I have to say.
Oh, stop breaking the magic! You know we don't drink until we have this one solitary drink that passes our lips.
Absolutely, it's the one cocktail we have all week.
All week. Well, obviously we make a cocktail every single week that is inspired by our story, featuring a secret ingredient.
Yes.
My story this week, so I chose the secret ingredient, and it is art.
That's all I'm going to say on the matter.
All right. Well, there was a backup which I managed.
We could have made a perfectly lovely cocktail out of.
No. It's not the one you're thinking of. No, it's not the one you're thinking of. It's not the one you're thinking of, because I did send you an ingredient, and it turns out that was lies. No. Art is an inspiration. Art feeds the soul. It feeds the mind. It feeds our drinking habits. Okay, because all artists have needed to turn to a cocktail at some point or another.
You justify it any way you wish.
I asked you, Nick, what you could come up with, and there was a stony silence for about a week.
Came up with the same cocktail, but then I haven't got any of that stuff in the cupboard. So I can't make it, and I've got to go to work, so I can't go to the shops.
So I had to step in and help Nick this week on the cocktail making front. Very exciting. We have got
an artist's special.
An artist's special! There we go.
Yeah.
Art inspires the cocktail. An artist's special.
Yeah.
What a lovely sounding thing.
It's a good sounding name. Must admit, I'm dubious about some of these, about the ingredients. Just because they would not be my first spirits of choice.
I'm quietly confident about this one. It's curious. They have ingredients that are not Nick's favourite, but I think the right kind of these kind of ingredients will make a delicious drink.
I've been proved wrong before.
Well, first of all, let's mix up this bad boy. So we're going to go to our isolation kitchens. Isolation kitchens. Sean Connery's still in there from The Medicine Man.
He's still there. Can't get rid of him. Just won't go away.
We are going to go shake up a storm. We will see you in a minute.
See you in a bit.
And we're back.
Hello.
We have our artist's special, Nick.
We do. It is a beautiful colour.
It is a gorgeous colour.
A deep red colour.
You are supposed to garnish it with a little sprig of red currant, but I couldn't find any red currant, so I've used chopped onions.
Okay.
No, I haven't.
It's an option.
Our artist special. Do you want to talk to the ingredients, or shall I?
Well, I can do. We have Irish whiskey.
Yes, I do.
You have sherry.
Yeah.
Lemon juice. And red currant syrup.
Yes.
Which is intriguing, which I've never, ever used as an ingredient before.
Neither have I. So normally Nick has a very well-stocked, well, the Poisoner's Cabinet is very, very well-stocked, but on this occasion there just happened to be a couple of ingredients that I had rather than he had.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm not a fan. I'm not a whiskey drinker. I'm not a fan of the whiskey, and I'm not a fan of the sherry either. So I think there might be some sherry left over from about 12 Christmases ago, somewhere at the back, that someone probably bought me at some point, going, "Yeah, you like drinks? Have this." It's been sitting in my
like
cupboard for 12
Harvey's
years.
Bristol cream or something
Exactly what
like
it is.
that.
Yeah,
Cooking sherry.
that's the level of sherry that's in my cupboard.
So we did think about, sometimes you can adapt these recipes, and actually in Difford's it says you can use Scotch instead of Irish whiskey. But when I looked at it, it called for Jameson's. It called for Oloroso sherry. Now I know nothing about sherry.
I have no idea.
And my accent is about to change because through no fault of my own, I was looking at Irish whiskey and thinking, I have Jameson's when you can have Bushmills, Northern Irish whiskey, aha! So I've been to the Bushmills distillery many, many times.
To get this.
Just to get drunk.
Around
just
the distillery.
Around to the distillery. It's the thing if you're Northern Irish, you just got a hotline to the woman's out of whiskey, for God's sake. And I got some, the beautifully named Blackbush. Bushmills. Blackbush is triple distilled, is an Irish whiskey. It's aged in sherry casks and bourbon casks, and the sherry casks they use are the Oloroso sherry casks.
Well, look at that. It all links together.
There we go. So actually that's the beauty of Bushmills and Blackbush in particular. Very nice. It is a blend, but it's really delicious, and you get those notes of the lovely bourbon and the sherry through. So that's what
I don't
makes
care.
it so
I want to
lovely.
drink the cocktail.
Yes, I knew. I could see on Nick's face. Whiskey means nothing to me, woman.
Move on. Speed it up.
God
speed
damn it,
up.
I never
wanna
get
drink.
to do this. I am going to drag this shit out, Nick. Anyway, and the sherry, Oloroso, managed to find that. Seems very nice. The red currant syrup. Yes, this is a thing. I had to improvise by getting some red currant jelly and reducing it down into a syrup. That's how I
So
did
have you
this.
made these cocktails with jam?
Not... yeah, pretty much.
Right. Okay. I like jam.
Well, who doesn't? Who doesn't like jam? Anyway, let's dive in and see.
Yes.
It's all the flavours that Nick hates in one lovely
Apart
glass.
from jam. I like jam.
Apart from jam. Let's go for a try.
That's actually very nice.
Yeah!
The fruitiness from the syrup really mellows it all
There you
down and brings it all together.
There
But
you
that's
go, friend.
very pleasant.
It's a surprising one, isn't it? It's like, the sweetness and the lemon.
Yep, it really blends in. I mean, let's say it is incredibly strong. I would have one of those. If I had more than that, I might be on the floor.
I really like that. If we had just picked out any brand is available but Bell's or Famous Grouse, it would have tasted vile.
That's really nice.
Really
I'd
pleasant.
go with that, absolutely.
It's a classy kind of...
I mean, it is a classic as well. I mean, it is a classic. It's one from the 20s, so in the Savoy cocktail
I
book.
didn't think I would like it as much as
Right,
I did.
you're going to have to make that again.
I shall. I took such care and effort making that. And I was the precision, Nick, that I took for mixing. Normally I just fucking improvise on my own ones. But I was like, oh God, I have to make it right for Nick.
You have outdone yourself. It is beautiful.
I am delighted with that. And I'm delighted with that for this particular story. And I also put it in my fancy Waterford crystal glass. So I'm feeling very merry and pleased with myself. So, we have our cocktails firmly in hand. Nick, you ready? Ready for a story?
Oh, yeah. Yes, go for it. I enjoy a story.
You sound surprised, like, what's a story?
No, I am. It's a story. There's a story too. Can I not go to bed? Let's do a story.
Let's do a story. All right, in 1889, a rather popular writer pens an essay about a young man long since dead, but who fascinated the literature and the arts world. The subject of this brief memoir, though of an extremely artistic temperament, followed many masters other than art, being not merely a poet and a painter, an art critic, an antiquarian, a writer of prose, an amateur of beautiful things, and a dilettante of things delightful, but also a forger of no mean or ordinary capabilities, and a subtle and secret poisoner almost without rival in this or any age.
Very dramatic. I like the drama.
Indeed. We shall come back to the identity of that writer. But this week, yes, we are going to look at the quite frankly fabulous case of Thomas Griffiths Wainewright. Artist, author, and serial killer? Right, that's it. That's the story.
You look so excited for this story.
I am so excited for this story. It's one that I've been meaning to visit and then started to really start doing the research. And there's just gems in here. Yes, a 100% dandy of Regency era England, and a man who would go on to inspire tales from the likes of Charles Dickens and Edward Bulwer Lytton. Thomas Griffiths Wainewright was born in 1794 into an affluent family in Richmond, London. His start was tinged with tragedy. His mother, Anne, sadly died in childbirth, and that broke her father's heart. His grandfather, Ralph Griffith, great name, was the editor of the rather prestigious Monthly Review.
Ooh, fancy.
Yes, but the family was quite well off. Obviously, he was a respected editor. His father also, little side note, had the foresight to buy with a friend the rights to the erotic novel Fanny Hill.
Well, excellent.
Yes,
well
before it was banned for obscenity, so that made him muchos moolah.
Yeah, lots of cash.
Have you read Fanny Hill?
I know I'm not. I know the name, but I've never actually read it.
I've read bits of it. Well,
I've just read the rude bits.
Yes, very much so. In a book that was called Old-Fashioned Erotica. It's filth. But Thomas's father, a lawyer, sadly passed away a few years later. Thomas was orphaned at quite a young age, but he was lucky. He went to live with his grandparents in their rather stylish home in Chiswick.
Ooh.
Oh, you like Chiswick?
I like Chiswick.
All of Nick's old haunts. And so you can imagine as he's growing up, Ralph, the editor of the Monthly Review, was very well connected in literary circles. So Thomas's immersions into this fanciful bohemian world of entertainment and literature and art and celebrity spotting to an extent would have started at quite a young age. Grandfather wasn't particularly fond of his grandson, though.
It's always encouraging.
Well, I don't think there's any kind of hint of that he was mistreated. I think possibly he resented his grandson because he inadvertently killed his daughter through childbirth.
Yeah,
which is quite sad. But the grandfather, he was a very wealthy man, but when he died in 1809, when Thomas was about 15, he left him a rather meagre amount in his will. I mean, he would have had a lot of money. Only around £5,250 was left to Thomas. Now, in today's money, that's pretty substantial.
Still a decent chunk.
Certainly enough to live on comfortably, if one has modest tastes, shall we say. And when his grandmother passed away a couple of years later, when Thomas was about 17, there's just a roll call of death through his family.
Is he started already?
No. There's no indication that he had anything to do with his... Obviously, he had something to do with his mother's death.
Yeah, not through his own choice, I feel.
No, he didn't. He wasn't poisoning her on the way out. His father, no, just tragedy. And his grandparents, they were old. They died. But when his grandmother died, he moved into the care of his uncle George. And Charles was the heir to the Griffith fortune. He was also a writer. So Thomas continued to benefit from the family's wealth. He also studied at Greenwich Academy, which was a private school. There's some reports saying Hammersmith Academy. I think it's actually Greenwich Academy. Apparently he was taught by Charles Burney. Have you heard of Charles Burney?
I don't know who Charles Burney is.
He's a very famous scholar and chaplain to George III. I have never heard of George Burney.
I don't know who
he is, but everyone was like, oh, isn't that fancy?
Are you sure it's not Hammersmith? Because Greenwich is a long way from Chiswick.
It could be. Some say Greenwich, some say Hammersmith. I mean, I don't think they're worried about catchment area at that time. You're going to be sent to the good school.
Have you got the cash?
Have you got the moolah? He comes out of school, and interestingly enough, he has in his late teens the idea of joining the army.
Well, it was the fashionable thing. You get a smart red uniform.
I don't think it was any out of any sense of duty. It was he wasn't terribly interested in working his way up the ranks. What happens in those days, if you want to join the army but you don't really fancy being a private, you can buy a commission.
Yep.
So his uncle helped him to buy a commission. This is where you can pay to be made an officer in the cavalry or infantry regiments without having to wait for a promotion. There were various justifications for this, all of which are pretty tenuous, apart from right at the bottom of the list going, it was all about class. Literally, you had to have money.
Yeah, gentlemen make the best officers.
Oh, totally, they make the best officers.
Totally.
Was abandoned later on because of massive corruption and incompetence across the board. But yeah, they're not cheap to come by. Didn't indeed to the other hard-working officers either, if you just walk in on a commission with a funny hat on. But he served as a cornet, which is the lowest ranking officer. He didn't serve as a musical instrument. Despite my research, I couldn't prove that.
I think it's potentially coronet.
Coronet?
I think a cornet is an ice cream.
Well, maybe he was that. I think it's spelled cornet.
Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I will Google this. Where was it?
No, I apologise. You are
cornet.
C-O-R-N-E-T.
Cornet. There we are. That's a cornetto you're thinking of as well.
Yes, probably. I don't. The whiskey's gone to my head.
You've had one sip, by God.
I've had one sip, but all I'm thinking about now is ice cream.
No, a cornet is a trumpet as well, isn't it? Well, he was everything.
Yes.
He was an ice cream man. He was a musician. He was a poet.
Do you think he played the tunes on his instrument for the ice cream van?
To lure the children to him.
Well, my mind just made that link.
No, he was either way, he was the lowest ranking officer. Now, at that lowest rank, that would have cost around £450 at the time. That is equivalent to £41,000 today.
See, that's a lot of money for the lowest rank.
For the lowest rank. I think I looked it up. I think it's in the foot guard, and if you are, it's not Major General. It's another rank. It's gone out of my head, but it was something like the equivalent of £800,000 to buy up to that level immediately, which is foolish on all levels, clearly.
But imagine the hat you'd get. It'd be worth spending £800,000 just on the hat.
Well, his time in the army, regardless, no matter the expense that was paid into it, did not end well. After a year, he left the army. He sold on his commission. You could do that. You could basically sell it and someone could have your place. Great system for leadership. And it's just after he left the army he's said to have suffered a severe mental breakdown. Or to use his own words, he was broken like a vessel of clay. Ooh. And this breakdown prostrated him for some time. It was suggested by the writer Havelock Ellis, who's a very interesting person himself, that Wainwright was never normal after this period of his life. This period of this mental breakdown that is written about is very sketchy.
But he didn't actually go to war or anything. He didn't.
No, oh god, so no. It's not like he had the horrors of war. It's not like he was in the field.
He just didn't like getting up early or something.
Oh no, he was sent to Cork. He was in Cork on garrison duty. I think he had sort of glamorous ideas of going to Canada.
Well, keep those Irish under check, you know. Could have all sorts of mischief.
Oh, very terrible. And if you go to Cork, oh god, it's a lawless place down there. It's the south. But either way, he comes home from the army, and despite this setback, he has another plan. He has chosen to become a fully fledged dandy.
Nice.
And that very much was a thing back then.
Sort of Beau Brummel sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Beau Brummel, Byron on occasion, the Count d'Orsay. Yes, being a dandy is essentially...
It's my dream.
I'm going to read some descriptions out, Nick, and it is like your CV. A dandy is defined by... Essentially, it's a man who places particular importance on the physical appearance, exceptional clothes, refined language, and leisurely hobbies. All with an appearance of nonchalance.
Absolutely.
A dandy is very different from a fop. There's two absolute things. So fops are much more extravagant. They're much more silly in a way, in their kind of costume.
Bit more comical in there.
Exactly. Whereas a dandy is a fashionista, is a little bit more serious.
Desperately serious, yeah.
Oh yeah, it is the total model who is not looking at you, doesn't get out of bed for less than £5,000 and is wearing some stunning couture. That's a dandy, in boy form. In 1836, Thomas Carlyle wrote, "A dandy is a clothes-wearing man. The man whose trade, office, and existence consists in the wearing of clothes. Every faculty of his soul, spirit, purse, and person is heroically consecrated to this one object, the wearing of clothes. Wisely and well, so that others dress to live, he lives to dress."
Marvel, that is brilliant. I love that.
So Thomas was described at this time, one description, again from that famous writer, who we'll come back to later. His beautiful rings, his antique cameo breastpin, his pale lemon-coloured kid gloves, love that, were well known indeed, and indeed regarded by Hazlitt as being the signs of a new manner in literature, while his rich curly hair, fine eyes, and exquisite white hands gave him the dangerous and delightful distinction of being different from others.
That's brilliant. I love it.
He is setting himself out to be a dandy, and if you want to succeed as a dandy, you must have a career in the world of art.
Marvellous.
Hey! Art runs through his life. It's a huge part of his existence and really what he tries to make a career out of. It's the homestead of the dandy as well. So he starts trying to forge a living out of being a dandy and working in the world of art. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that?
Quite.
I'd like to do that.
Oh, gotcha. Sign me up.
But you can pull off the fashion. I can't. I can imagine you in some exquisite pale lemon-coloured kid gloves.
It was interesting because I actually Beau Brummel, I think probably slightly before this time.
Not hugely different.
Not hugely different, but perhaps like 20 years or so. And he had leather boots that every morning were washed in champagne. they were cleaned. His leather boots were cleaned with champagne every morning.
Much like my liver.
So it's like, just so unbelievably wasteful and decadent. It's just like, yes.
So Thomas tries to make a living, as I said. The roll call of names through the story is staggering. He takes up painting. And he works as an apprentice with Thomas Phillips, very famous portrait painter. If you've seen the portrait of Lord Byron, the first sort of portrait idea of Lord Byron that comes to your head, he did it. William Blake, Thomas Phillips did it. Thomas Wainewright also did a sketch of Lord Byron. And he embarks on a literary career. And he can write. He has a turn of phrase. He wrote quite successfully as an art critic and an essayist for a number of publications, such as a literary pocketbook, Blackwood's Magazine, the Foreign Quarterly Review, and the London Magazine.
Fancy.
And it's particularly for the London Magazine that he's well known. And while writing for them, he employed some pen names. Would you like to hear them?
I would love to. Are they names I'd recognise?
No.
Oh, okay. They're
No,
crazy
but
names.
they are spectacular.
Ooh, I want to know. I want to know.
Okay, the first one, I hope I get this right. Igome Bonmot.
Oh, fancy.
Bonmot,
Igome
as it
Bonmot.
were. Igome Bonmot.
Good name.
Number 2. All right. Janus Weathercock. Janus, doesn't really matter.
How childish are we? Oh, it's a cock.
Okay, all right, wait. I have to set myself up for the last one. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Cornelius van Vinkbooms.
Sorry, say that one again.
Cornelius van Vinkbooms.
Vic Booms. Oh, that is excellent. Oh, I'm changing my name tomorrow. That's...
He was known as Van Vinkbooms.
I love that. That is awesome.
You see why I wanted to do this story.
Right, we have to make a cocktail called that.
Cornelius van Vinkbooms. If I ever get another cat, that is its name.
Oh, yes.
And his name, this was quite a famous name. People write about it with no hint of irony. Van Vinkboom's work was very good. Yes, and Janus or Janus. I'm sorry, it's just... There we are.
Well, named after a Roman god is very fancy, you know.
Janus? What? Is that Jupiter?
No, it's a Roman god of doorways, two-headed chap.
Doorways? What?
Yeah, no, he had head, but with a face on both sides, so looking both ways out of...
Oh, yes. Sorry, I thought it was like God of Doors. That shit.
God of doors. I'm the god of door handles and hinges. Oh, I'm very fancy.
So, under these many pseudonyms, and while he was painting and he was writing, his life actually seemed to be going quite well. He wore the finest of clothes, he hosted the finest of parties, and he was collecting exceptional art as well, not only drawing it, but collecting it. Told the finest of jokes, was quite the wit. He was friends with, or at least acquaintances with, Charles Lamb. Again, the roll call of names here, who praised his writing and said he was accomplished. He was a massive fan of Wordsworth. He even exhibited writings in the Royal Academy. So he was doing all right.
Doing all right.
Quite a good life, and he looked fantastic.
Absolutely.
And no one laughed at his name. And also, he fell in love.
Oh.
Yes. He fell in love with the 18-year-old daughter of his boarding house landlady. Her name was Eliza Ward. They met... Apparently they were smitten immediately, and 2 years after meeting, they married in St. Martin-on-the-Fields Church. Lovely. Aww.
Lovely story.
Yes. But
Oh, God.
this sort of heady lifestyle, it don't come cheap, Nick.
Ooh, no.
No.
Ooh, no.
And Thomas was running out of money. And when you run out of money, what do? You amass some debts. You start
Absolutely.
borrowing, because he has a fancy lifestyle to uphold. The inheritance he received from his grandfather had been invested in the Bank of England, so he only received the dividends. Now, this was about £200 a year, so you think about it, it's about 20 grand a year.
Not enough to keep up a desperately fancy lifestyle.
Comfortable lifestyle, not fancy. The rest of the money was held in trust for his wife and eventual young son. Other relatives of his family were the trustees on this, so he couldn't access the capital. He could only have the dividends.
So this was left by his grandfather. Obviously didn't trust him enough to look after his own money.
I'm not sure whether the grandfather stipulated that or whether he put it in trust with the family.
I can't be trusted with my own cash. Will you look after it for me?
It seems like an amazing moment of insight and benevolence on his part if he's decided, I will put this away from my wife and children. And other members of his family were the trustees. He can't get at the capital. He's only got this measly £200 a year.
Oh, poor him.
I love this sort of age as well, where you can say, it's like, what do you make? I make 200 a year. How many horses do you have? 5. That's too many. So he took to his first crime in 1823. Not what we would think Not the entire basis of this entire podcast. No. It took, as we alluded to earlier, to forgery. Because he couldn't get the trustees of this investment to sign it over to him or to access any of the capitals, he forged their signatures. This was a crime punishable by death.
Oh, wow.
At that time.
That seems somewhat extreme. For stealing your own money.
Well, forgery was, yes. That was it. Forgery was a no-no at the time, because I suppose...
It still is now, really.
Well, you're not going to be killed.
No, this is true.
Or are you?
Depends what you forge, I suppose.
Loophole. Well, if you forge a bank slip in someone's handwriting, maybe you are killed. Or set upon by geese.
I'm going to pretend to be the Queen. Aha!
I shall need a copy of your signature and 5 of your corgis to guard me. No, he didn't do any of that. He forged the trustee's signature in order to gain half his capital. He was restrained. He only took out £2,500. Now that is a handsome sum. That is going to be fine, surely, for a few years. It's going to keep you in lemon gloves and big hats,
gloves made of lemons,
and monocles as the size of your face.
Just one massive monocle.
It's like a dick measuring contest at these things. Oh yeah, this monocle.
You look like a cyclops.
Yes, he has the money to buy his giant monocle. But within a year, he had burned through it.
All those monocles. Cupboards full.
Yep.
Shelf on shelf of monocles.
He hasn't even had a party yet. He's just got a pile of monocles. And there's fires all over his house because the sunlight is being magnified.
That's where the money's gone. It's all burnt.
So, he'd run out of money. What does he do? Well, he knows he's got half the capital in there. Forges again.
Oh.
Forges signatures, and he empties the account completely. Okay, good. We're okay for money. Him and Eliza, his lovely, sexy wife, we've got money. We can keep having our parties. But the money runs out. Again. Time's getting desperate. He starts to have to sell off his art to secure loans. The debts are mounting up and up. It's just he can't keep his head above water. And in 1828, they're so hard up that him and Eliza moved back in with his now very elderly uncle at the Chiswick estate.
Over in Chiswick.
Yeah, it's over at Chiswick. It's a beautiful house as well.
Well, imagine then, probably Chiswick was relatively rural, I suppose, back then.
It was on the outskirts
of London. It's on the outskirts rather than, yeah.
It's a beautiful estate, and Thomas is very keen to inherit it. He is in line to get it, but it's a big house. It's fine. Uncle George is like, no, come in. I could use the company. That's a lot of monocles. Please, put them in the monocle wing. Not long after their arrival, poor Uncle George was taken ill.
Oh, no.
Struck by horrible stomach pains and died convulsing.
Oh. I mean, that's a leap, isn't it? From forgery to that.
George is old.
Does he have kids and stuff of his?
No. The estate will pass to Thomas.
What goes to Thomas?
The estate passes to Thomas, including £5,000 cash, all the house and the grounds, and an entire library in there. And the library would be worth, the books alone would be worth a fortune. There's no investigation of George's death. Medical notes, can't see them. But he dies. Thomas and Eliza are rich again. They now have a lavish house as well in Chiswick.
Gotcha. I think at the fancy parties you could have
fancy parties. They have room to spare as well. Eliza's mother and her 2 stepsisters, Helen and Madalena, great name, move into the estate. Madalena's a strange Spanish girl. I don't know. She's
constant with her castanets. Shush, Madalena.
These monocles work so well for this. But it's not as simple as just having a lovely house and entertaining people. The upkeep
for it. Yeah.
Exactly. The upkeep of a huge country house comes with massive bills. People always forget the bills. Having to host all of these parties, the catering, the lighting, the costumes, and also just the
staff have to keep such a place going.
You need an income coming through, and the £5,000 cash burned through immediately. The family has to sell off the library, the precious library, in order to upkeep the house and to keep the parties going, because Thomas has become famous in social circles for his parties. And it's not long before the debts are mounting up again, because people expected the most extravagant things, and if you were a dandy, you had to look the part.
Oh God, absolutely. Can't be wearing the same cravat twice.
But the debts are mounting up to maintain this lifestyle. It's lucky then that Eliza's mother, she succumbed to a sudden, swift illness just after updating her will in Eliza's sole favour.
Well, how convenient.
How convenient. So, little bit more money comes into their pockets to keep the wolves from the door. It's never enough. All the money keeps running out and they need a new plan. You can imagine Thomas and Eliza are probably sitting at the dining table with the family, looking around this huge house, thinking about what they can sell, what can they insure, what can they scam, what can they forge. Oh, hello, Helen. Yes, in 1830. Mm-hmm.
Rude.
Their eyes metaphorically fall on Eliza's 21-year-old sister, Helen. Eliza decides to take her sibling on a lovely, lovely trip to London. She's going to show her all the wondrous sights, all the insurance companies in the city.
Oh, those are exciting places to visit when you're a young girl out on the town.
Oh, yes. Have you seen this one over here? This is the oldest one. This is the second oldest one. This is the third oldest one. She takes her sister to 15 different insurance companies, and she attempts to secure life insurance policies on Helen at each one. They don't work 100% of the time, but she gets enough insurance policies to the tune of £16,000.
Wow.
In that day and age. That is around 1.5 million. But she just does it multiple times, and the insurance companies don't talk to each other that much at that time, so she's able to secure this much. So they walk away after their lovely day out in London. Helen's probably crying.
And she pushes them in the river or something.
No, she doesn't. No, they get home. They go back to the estate, and sure enough, in December of that year, Helen falls ill.
So Eliza's well into the wife is well knowing what's going on.
Yeah, Eliza knows what's going on 100%.
Yeah.
Let's not try and dress it up for one bloody second. In fact, one of the servants sees Eliza giving Helen medicine for her troubles. Medicine? In inverted commas. When Eliza falls ill, Thomas calls in a very fashionable doctor, the most fashionable doctor in town. Oh, the most
Who else
fashionable
would you
doctor.
ask?
Of course. And the most fashionable doctor must be the most educated and the most, experienced and
That's
the
how
most
it works.
professional, isn't it? Yes, he must be great. So she has headaches and partial blindness. He prescribes bloodletting and laxatives.
It's the way forward. Go for it, I think.
You got ghost in your blood, woman!
Ghost, oh yeah.
So yeah, he's just trying to purge her of all fluids while she's going, help me. It does not work. Poor Helen dies in convulsions, displaying all the symptoms that the previous people who have died have displayed, and that we now know.
Can I guess?
Yes.
Strychnine.
The
convulsions give it away.
There it is, it's the convulsions. Luckily, just before she died, she'd made her will, naming Eliza as a sole benefactor and Thomas as the executor of her will.
Oh, how convenient.
Wasn't that lucky? So Helen is dead. They got 1.5 million equivalent coming to them. Thomas and Eliza dab their eyes. Oh my god, it's so sad, it's so sad. Off to the insurance companies. Yeah. Off they go to the insurance companies. Money, please. The insurance companies go, no.
This is just later the same year.
It's the same day. No, it's in December. I think we've gone into, it's a week or two later. There's not exactly a timeline, but the insurance companies obviously look into this, go, why did a 21-year-old healthy woman die? They go, this is very strange, we're not happy. And they talk to each other. I think they talk to each other. There's implications that they know there's multiple policies out on this woman's life, so they sort of tell the police, but their intention is to sue Thomas.
See, I love that, is that we're not actually bothered about this woman might have been murdered. that is entirely inconsequential to the insurance company. What we are concerned about is that we might be out of pocket.
100%. It starts the suing of the century. Everyone starts suing each other for payouts.
And the world is
no one gives a shit that these people are dead. One thing that's holding them back about really investigating whether Helen was murdered or not, or even pursuing the murder charge, is science. Remember, we are in the 1830s now, 1820s, 1830s. The science has not advanced. All the cases we talked about beforehand, we've been mostly a few years ahead or a long time back. True. There's no means of detecting strychnine in the body, really, effectively, unless you have a genius pioneer of the science. I think there's 3 autopsies carried out on Helen. There's certainly 1. There's reports that there's up to 3, but nothing is found. There's no evidence of strychnine. And this is where you can see where the the logic of poisoners even a few years later.
Absolutely, yeah.
Poison is not detectable in the body. But the main thing is that the insurance companies think that he is committed insurance fraud. Thomas himself is still forging signatures. He's trying to sue the insurance companies on behalf of other members of his family, because some of the insurance policies on Helen's life he put in the other sister's name and other members of his family. So he acts all benevolent, going, they're not paying out for Helen's death. Don't worry, I'll act on your behalf. I'll sue you. Everyone is suing each other for this money, and this woman is dead. This starts ramping up. These investigations around insurance fraud, not about murder, are being levelled at him. So completely without guilt or any worry at all, he flees to France.
As the innocent often do.
Again, the details of this are a little bit bizarre. The investigations maybe are bringing too much attention onto him. Maybe he's smart enough to go, okay, there's only a matter of time before they find out that I've committed forgery elsewhere, which has the death penalty. Also, I've killed some people, but screw them. No one will know about that. There are rumours, and perpetuated later perhaps, that he had actually gone to France because he was chasing a woman he'd fallen in love with. He went there for romance, and he was such a dastardly fiend. It's probably just gossip. But either way, he does go to France. He leaves Eliza and his son in London, and he hides in France for years.
Oh, wow, long time.
He's over there for 7 years.
That's a very long time, yeah.
Exactly. Eliza lives in poverty as a single mother, and he reportedly tries to make a living as an artist in France. Again, the famous writer. There's an allegation that something else untoward happened in France when he went over there, that he went to Boulogne to visit the father of a young lady that he was in love with. This lady he was reportedly pursuing while he was also running away from the authorities. And while he was there was some sort of back and forth that he convinced the father of this young lady to insure his life with one of the companies that was coming after him. And as soon as the necessary formalities had been gone through, the policy executed, Thomas dropped some crystals of strychnine into the father's coffee, and they sat together one evening after dinner. He himself did not gain any monetary advantage of doing this. His aim was simply revenge himself of the first office that refused to pay him the price of his sin with Helen's death. His friend died the next day in his presence. Highly unlikely. But then reportedly he left Boulogne and he went on a sketching tour around France while this is going on. The most picturesque parts of Brittany, and then he stayed with friends. He went down to the countryside in Saint-Omer. He moved to Paris, where he tries to eke out a living. Now, some reports are that he did very well as a portrait artist, others that he didn't live very well at all. But either way, he's in France for 7 years. Back home, the investigations into his actions raged on. And this is when finally, well, not after 7 years, but during this 7 years, the trustees of the original inheritance trust, the family members, who have just suddenly woken up one day and gone, I've noticed Eliza is living in poverty in London. Where are all the dividends from the big capital that you put into the bank going? And so they go and talk to the Bank of England, and the Bank of England going, no, you withdrew the money years ago. And of course they go, forgery has been committed.
But it's taken them a hell of a long time to twig. All this is
Oh my god. Literally, while Thomas is in France, all these cases are being mounted up by the insurance companies to sue him for fraud. By the Bank of England now, they've got this conviction of a forgery. They can get him, but he's in France. There is no extradition treaty at the time with France. They can't get him back over. They try all sorts of different complicated ways of trying to get him back. He's saying he used a forged passport, whatever. They can't get him while he's in France. So they think they're screwed. That is until Thomas decides to come back to the UK.
Fool.
Maybe he thought it'd been long enough. Maybe he thought no one would be after him anymore. Maybe he was chasing another woman, as some people romantically claim. Maybe he was just an idiot.
Let's go with the last one, I think.
Let's go with that. Either way, he was found in the street. Again, there are reports that he hid in a flat with his curtains drawn, so no one would see him.
That'll do it.
He did that, and then one day he heard a commotion in the street, and he opened his curtains, or he went out to see what the commotion was, and someone pointed him out, going, "There's Thomas Wainewright, the forger." Who's doing that?
No, that did not happen. That did not happen.
Well, he is arrested. Arrested for forgery, not for murder.
Forget the murder.
Forget the murder. Oh, screw that. Never mind.
3 dead people? Meh. Forgery. Ooh.
Exactly. And it's amazing, when he's in jail, this sort of causes ripple of scandal as well. I mean, people love gossip at the time. And he is visited,
Still
apparently. Sorry?
Still do.
Oh yeah.
Not just at the time.
Well, that's it. They just, this is great. And the people around, the famous people, the literary characters, they go and see him. They go and visit. They're happy to talk about it at the parties. Oh, like Thomas. Oh, yes, I knew him, and I know all these things about him.
Well, everyone loves a scandal.
People are talking about all sorts of things. There's again a piece of writing later where it says there's no doubt that the poison that he used was strychnine. In one of the beautiful rings of which he was so proud, and which he used to serve to show off the fine modelling of his delicate ivory hands, he used to carry crystals of the Indian nux vomica, poison, nearly tasteless, difficult of discovery, and capable of almost infinite dilution.
A poison ring. Classic.
Poison ring. People are
classic
spreading
thing.
these rumours. Charles Dickens sees him in jail. Charles Dickens does not know him. He's there. He's a reporter, obviously, at the time. He later writes about the case, that he's interested in him. And while he's in jail, Thomas is still upholding this idea of himself as a gentleman. And he tells a friend, this is brilliant. I don't know why I find this so funny. I will tell you one thing in which I have succeeded to the last. I have been determined through my life to hold the position of a gentleman. I have always done so, and I do still. It is the custom of this place that each of the inmates of a cell shall take his morning's turn of sweeping it out. I occupy a cell with a bricklayer and a sweep, but they never hand the broom to me.
Okay, not entirely sure. Well, okay, fine.
When the guards come round, they only give the broom to the bricklayer and the sweep. They would never ask a gentleman to sweep his cell.
And he's upset by this?
No, he thinks it's great.
Okay.
No, he's just showing off, going like, oh no, they only hand it to the other prisoners. No,
To
me,
the
I'm a
working
gentleman.
class.
The working classes, exactly. They know I'm a gentleman. I don't think anyone is doing that. They're probably just like, he's shit at it. Let's just not do this.
He'll get it wrong. He'll use the other end to sweep or something. It'll go. It won't
poke
work
people
well.
with it. Thomas is charged with 4 counts of forgery. He pleads not guilty to all of them because they carry the death penalty. Well, the higher charges carry the death penalty. But in a roundabout way, he obviously has a discussion. He manages to commute his sentence at somewhere along the line to have the 2 higher charges of forgery dropped, and he pleads guilty to 2 lower charges of forgery. I think it's obtaining money by forgery. I don't know how that's lower, but because it gets him out of the death penalty, and he thinks that's good, fine, okay, I can take a few years in jail, it'll be fine. He's escaped that. What he's sentenced to instead is to be transported to Australia. And he's like, whoa, no.
Yeah, that's not going to be much fun either.
No, he didn't know that was part of the bargain. He's very upset by it. And he writes to the Home Secretary and everyone going, no!
I'm a gentleman, I can't go to Australia.
I can't work a broom. No, it doesn't work. He tries all these letters, and in all these letters, he very much points the finger at Eliza, at his wife.
Oh, rude.
Well, he says that she was part of it. She was the instigator. She was doing this. He doesn't deny his involvement in the forgery. Points a finger at her, but it doesn't work. He's sent to Tasmania in 1837. But interesting enough, he spent 10 years in the penal colony. He started off working on a chain gang. Great stuff.
Really? Not that fun.
Grim work. And he spent 2 years breaking rocks, which is horrible.
Yeah, not a fun way to spend your time.
He managed to be transferred to a hospital to become a hospital orderly. And thanks to his good behaviour, he was able to work as an artist again. In the hospital, he started doing sketches of the patients, of the staff, and he was quite well praised. His drawings of people either were exchanged, in some cases, for money, or just for better treatment, or for favours. He even painted the Lieutenant Governor of the colony. And many of his pictures that he painted during that time survive to this day in public and private collections across Australia. Eventually, he was given a conditional pardon, which allowed him his freedom. He was able to make his own living in Hobart. He died just 2 years after having his freedom of apoplexy.
So he didn't go back to the UK.
He died in 1846. He was sentenced to be in Australia for the rest of his life. For the rest of his life. But the power of his legacy survived. For all his attempts to be a gentleman and to be recognised in society, this world of gossip and style over substance, some of the greatest writers of our generation went on to tell stories about him and claim to have known him. People talked about these stories about the strychnine he carried in the ring. Charles Dickens allegedly based his short story Hunted Down, on Thomas, and Edward Bulwer Lytton, as we said, similarly said to have based parts of Lucretia on his life. He's mentioned in another Sherlock Holmes story The Adventure of the Illustrious Client.
Oh, we had a lot of Holmes.
Yeah, there we are. And that popular writer from the start who said at the end of his memoirs, "It is gratifying to note that fiction has paid some homage to one who was so powerful with pen, pencil, and poison."
Is it Oscar Wilde?
It's none other than Oscar Wilde.
Ah! I knew it.
Oscar Wilde, absolutely fantastic. And Oscar Wilde also has two of the other quotes, the best quotes about Thomas, about his life. In this piece that he wrote about Thomas Wainewright, Pen, Pencil and Poison, you can read it online and it is well worth a read. It's wonderful. He does summarise some of the rumours. You can tell there's his own artistic take on it.
I'm sure.
But he reports in this, he said that while in prison, Thomas was asked if he poisoned Helen, to which he allegedly replied, "Yes, it was a dreadful thing to do, but she had very thick ankles."
Oh, I shouldn't laugh at that, but that's brilliant.
How could that be anyone other than Oscar Wilde?
That has to be Oscar Wilde. My God.
Marvellous. I think the final thing he said, and the final thing we'll end with, is that Oscar wrote, "This young dandy sought to be somebody rather than to do something."
Oh, that's nice.
And there is the story of
That is
Thomas
a good story.
Griffiths Wainewright.
Yay! Hooray for stories.
That has everything, isn't it?
That's brident. That's brilliant. What was the name again? Cornelius Van Boom.
Van Vinkbooms.
Van Vinkbooms. I'm gonna have to write that down somewhere because that's awesome.
We'll just have it tattooed on your body.
Yes.
Janus Weathercock and Hugues Beaumont, which almost sounds just normal. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a bit like.
Well, it's basically it's like Egon or like Egome, good word. Beaumont.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's boring. Cornelius Van Vinkbooms.
Van Vinkbooms is.
But isn't that?
best
That
name
is
ever.
Incredible story. How much of it do you think is true?
Well, in what way? I think probably most of it.
The reason I'm not. There's no trick question here.
Is it a
I'm not
test?
saying it's all
Actually, none of
lies.
it is. I made it all up.
I made it all up. I'm the greatest writer ever. No, everything that I have relayed has been in reports and in all of the research that I've done and various writings about it. The facts are in there, but there's part of me that goes, how much is embellishment over the years? How much of this is the writers of the time? There were extracts. I was really glad that I found the Oscar Wilde memoir online about him, because when I compared it to a lot of the writings that I'd found about Thomas Wainwright, they reported bits that Oscar had written as fact, when it's clearly a little bit of artistic license there, and they were saying, no, this actually happened. And it's a brilliant essay.
Absolutely.
And very Oscar. And he writes all about his artistic integrity. He writes about his skills as a writer. He does a lot of analysis on it with a few of his biting kind of comments in there. But that's the only place where I've actually found an ingredient for this story, was where they claimed, he claims that Thomas and Eliza with Helen brought her some poisoned jelly. But nowhere else says that. And so it makes you kind of think, in the rest of that story, it's so good. Yeah. But all these people who claim to know him, all these writers, did they really know him, or did they just want to say that?
Well, it's probably the sort of thing is that, do you know him? Well, I met him in passing at a party once, and then something dramatic happens, and you're their best mate. I think everyone's guilty of that, really.
Are they?
Well, I think you do embellish things or something. I met him once, and I could see it in his eyes. He was a wrong one.
No, it's a good story, and yes, so many people in this, and this, it's one of those things that it's surprising he's not more prominent in popular culture. Yeah, I don't think many people would know his name.
And I suppose also it didn't help, but because he was never convicted of murder.
No, never convicted of murder.
So
just a forgery.
It's just the forgery.
People go, did he kill his uncle? Did he kill his mother-in-law?
Wow. It's
certainly a coincidence.
It seems like a very close coincidence if he didn't. You also got to think, well, how far back did the wife know what was going on? How much? Because obviously very, very much with the sister, obviously. And then was she in it with the mother?
Maybe.
Because the will had just been changed to make
it all goes
Eliza
to her.
the sole beneficiary and things. So was she in it right from the very start?
Perhaps.
But she got away with everything.
Yeah.
And she would have been complicit in I would suspect, at least 2 murders.
Oh, God, yeah.
She's complicit, if not 3.
It's an interesting one to look at. The person is convicted for something else, and the murders, we're talking about the poisoning. It's very obvious that someone has died of strychnine poisoning, if not 3 people. But everyone's like, no, whatever. Yeah, it's the forgery because they just cannot.
It's one of the things.
Prove
What
it.
what is easier to prove? Well, it's like the whole Al Capone thing. What they got him on tax evasion rather than murder because it was easier to prove.
And strychnine as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We've had a lot of art. We've had a run of arsenic recently, so it's nice to have something different.
There was one piece that said that this might have been possibly the first. I don't think it was the first strychnine murder, but the first. Even though this wasn't a murder case or a trial. High profile kind of this is the use of strychnine. It's quite early. Poison panic kicks in just after this.
Yeah, it's a bit later, isn't it?
Poison panic's in the 30s and then in the 40s, and so people start getting panicked about arsenic, but people are killing each other quite successfully.
Oh, absolutely.
Poison rings. So there we go. The life of Thomas Griffiths Wainewright, or Cornelius Van Dyck Booms, as he shall be forever known.
As he shall, most certainly shall be, because it's a brilliant name.
It is.
Well, that's another episode for us. So what do you think? Do you have theories about Thomas Wainewright? Do you think Eliza was the mastermind behind it all? Do let us know. Get in touch on the Instagram and the Facebook. So we shall be there. Along
and the Twitter.
I always forget about the Twitter.
On the Twitter.
I don't twit, so I always forget about the Twitter. And the recipe for the artist special will be up on social later on today. Highly recommend you try it. It's surprisingly good.
Whiskey
really
drinkers, do it and get on the Irish whiskey. Get onto the different Irish whiskey. Do not sit with your Scotch and your bourbon in hand. No, the Irish whiskey is a wonderful landscape to traverse.
Okay, yeah, let's go with that. Do all of that, whatever she said.
I like whiskey. There will be one episode where I get really drunk and the accent's going to come out massively.
It doesn't take much for the accent to come out.
Well, follow us, like us, share us, download this shit, guys. But otherwise, mix yourself up a cocktail, enjoy this podcast and many others, and we will see you next week. We have been the people inside the poisoner's cabinet. Stay safe and remember, your loved ones are trying to kill you.
Bye-bye.